Now we are going to discuss about the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement, it's actually asking for the legal rights or the equal status of rights between the different communities. In America, that is in the United States of America, we have the division of people basing on their color, creed, or like skin. Like we in America, we have a population of Africans and basic Americans. So the African people are dark colored people when compared to the Americans. Americans are in bright colored people or white colored people. The African people are also known as the Negroes or blacks, whites. So now moving on to the ground reality here, as soon as Mr. Abraham Lincoln has passed away and he gave the freedom for them that we can no more use the word Negro at any point of time. But even then, after 100 years, if you see the reality here, there is a difference for everything for blacks and whites. The reality is that, so moving on to the actual facts, that even Abraham Lincoln has clearly mentioned that there is going to be no division in the America, and we are the United States of America. We have drawn people from various communities and settled in America, and there is no division of blacks and whites, but there is from grassroots level there is a differences for this. Right from buses, in buses we have separate buses for blacks and separate buses for whites. The buses and the comforts for whites are different when compared to the buses and compared to the comforts of blacks. So there is separation of buses for blacks, whites. Then moving on to the hotels. Again here we have the separation of hotels for blacks and whites. And one more tragic thing is that the blacks are not at all supposed to enter the buses which are specified for the whites. It is a crucial point, and if at any point of time by mistake if anybody unknowingly enters into the premises of the bus of the whites would literally throw them away from the bus. Then moving on to the hotels, they are completely banned, and they clearly mention that the blacks and dogs are not allowed into the hotels, which shows clearly the discrimination at a very par of excellence. And moving on to education. In education, blacks have separate schools and the whites have separate schools. In this way, there is a difference in the education, there is difference in the buses, there is differences in the transport, there is differences in the public gatherings. There are some specified places only for the whites to enter into there. There is a discrimination in the employment opportunities, there is discrimination in the promotion policies. In everything we find the differentiation and discrimination against the blacks and whites is the entire scenario, which is the background for this civil rights movement. As the movement was at its peak, this incident was initially started by Rosa Parks, who sat into the bus, and a white man enters into the black man's bus, and whites can enter into any of the buses. So the white man entered into the buses and he forces Rosa Parks to evacuate the seat and give him a seat, and Rosa Parks, who was tired of that day, rejects that she is not going to give any seat to him. This basic rejection of her black lady raised the issue anger of the whites, and later this stable lady has issued a very strong message to the whites that she is not going to bear any kind of tolerance further. The blacks were not only discriminated in the buses, in the hotels, in the education, in the job opportunities, or the providing of the employment opportunities or the promotion opportunities. They were not even allowed to build a house nearby to the whites. They were not even given the voting rights same to that of the whites. In this point or in this context, Rosa Parks' denial to give seat to the white have escalated the issue into a larger context, and this initiated the movement of blacks against the whites. And the blacks followed the completely peaceful violence methods, completely non-violent methods in order to fight against this discrimination. This was given the leadership by Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. was basically a priest or a preacher of religion of God, the word of the God, and he took up the initiative and he ran it and he gave his historical speech in the presence of millions of the Americans and asking for this. The movement was initiated in 1956. In 1956, and the initiation of the movement was started to a larger extent, and he banned the buses entry of the blacks. It is like voluntary ban put by blacks against themselves that they are not going to utilize any of the buses. The bus department was shocked because they banned it completely for 1 year, and none of the white blacks have entered into any of the city buses which are provided by the transport system, and the transport system has to change its laws because they have incurred heavy loss because of the denial of the blacks entering into the buses. Then the buses ban was lifted and there was no discrimination left for blacks and whites regarding the buses. This was initially a success for the people of the blacks against their discrimination. And as the time passed on, in 1963, 28th August 1963, millions of black Negroes walked or marched towards Washington DC and asked to pressurize the government to pass the civil rights movements, clearing that there would not be any discrimination against basing on the skin. In this moment, the historical speech made by our Martin Luther King was, "I have a dream." The dream is mentioning that even after 100 years, we have a small context of the speech, that is that I have, like, even after 100 years of Abraham Lincoln's denial or support for the support of having clear non-discriminatory setup, but even after 100 years after he passed the laws, even today we have a discrimination for blacks and whites, and the history has been a clear evidence of the tortures or the discriminations which are bared for us, and even today we are considered as slaves. I have a dream that 4 of my children would get well educated and they would not be judged basing on their skin but on their character and their ability to perform any things. In this way, he wished that a nation could provide a better perspective and development for the people basing on their character and ability and their visual abilities, not on any of the skin or racism or anything else. This historical speech has inspired millions of people in US, and the government was forced to take over the step of initiation, and finally the discrimination of blacks and whites was banned. In this process of journey, they took completely the non-violent methods inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, who took at this point of time inspiration drawn from Indian context. We all have to be proud that they have taken the Indian context, and also the same point of time we have to remember the contribution of women in this movement was a very high. Voluntarily they have come up to a larger extent, but on the 1963 historical speech day, no woman was given any right to speak in front of the podium or in the largest text of stage. But actual reality, because of this various diversified people getting motivated towards the issue, has escalated the issue to a larger extent, and which made the American government to bend down and create a clear constitution or evidences or laws clearing that there would not be any discrimination further either for blacks or for whites, and in this way equality can be achieved only through the means of peaceful methods rather than going or indulging into the violent methods where it does not benefit either of the parties. So the non-violent methods have gained more importance after the civil rights movement, which was initiated in 1955 under the leadership of Martin Luther King Jr. Yes, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s efforts were really fantastic in gathering the entire blacks in a single head and pressurizing the government, organizing the meetings, rallies, and preaching the message of equality. And today America stands for the symbol of equality. Today we have even a black president ruling the White House, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, a historical person, a historical change has happened. If Martin Luther King was not restored that day for this kind of change and he was not successful in getting a change in the laws, today Barack Obama could not have been the president of United States of America as the 44th president right now.